Hello, everyone, and welcome to our newest edition of DojoLIVE, connecting tech experts like you. My name is Dulce Luna, live from Hermosillo, Mexico. And first of all, I want to thank our faithful audience who session after session continue to see us. And before meeting our very special guest today, I want to welcome my co-host, live from Los Angeles. We have Tulio Siragusa, and from the other... Sorry to interrupt you, Tulio. So how are you?
Good. Happy New Year. Good to
Happy
see
New
you. I'm
Year.
excited for our call today.
Sure. I'm really excited too. So from the other side of the globe, we have from Mexico City, Carlos Ponce. Welcome, Carlos.
It's a pleasure to be here again.
Are you outside, Carlos? Are you outside?
I'm sorry?
It looks like are you outside? It looks like you're in a balcony. Are you outside?
No, it's a reflection actually, and you know what? There's something that I gotta confess. I'm not in Mexico City today.
What?
Where are you?
I'm in Baja right now.
Oh,
How cool is that?
Nice.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Let's talk about the interview there.
I got a little thing here. I got a little, So yeah, I'll be here for a couple of weeks and I'm working out of Baja, beautiful Baja. Sunny, as you can see. It's blue. You don't get that to see that in Mexico City.
Wow, you really tricked us.
Yeah, no, so I'll just leave the office. I'm just going to leave the office to the engineers. They're the ones who deserve it. Okay, nice. So thank you, Dulce. Thank you, Dulce. Thank you, Tulio.
Okay, great. So I would like to take this moment to introduce our guest today on DojoLIVE. We have Paul Shustak. He's a serial entrepreneur with more than 20 years experience in product design, development, and marketing. He's currently co-founder and CEO at Karen. You can check it out at Karen.care. This is a SaaS platform that helps families care for their elderly loved ones. He also co-founded Group Dragon, the first mobile platform for accountability groups, and Core Water, a fast-growing consumer products brand. Previously, Paul held senior product and marketing roles at Adobe, Sony, and Microsoft. So we're very excited for you, Paul, to be here with us today. We have so many questions for you, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to also have a special topic for today, which we will be talking about in a couple of minutes. But first, let's say hello to Paul Shustak. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm terrific. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome. So, well, today's topic is cracking the code on product success and why it matters to your business. The art and science of product design and strategy based on lessons learned during a 25-year career. Why did you choose this topic, Paul?
Product is sort of my obsession. It's kind of a lifelong journey that I think I'm on, which is, as the title says, cracking the code. It's product is a mystery. How do you create successful products on a repeatable basis? How do you sustain that success in the face of competition? Let's face it, most products fail. It's really hard. It's a big challenge. But I actually think it's the most important part of any business. Your product or service, if you like to call it that, is something that needs to be awesome, or you're going to fail, no matter how good your marketing is or your distribution. So that's why I'm obsessed with product.
So I'm curious, Paul, how did you get here? Can you give us a little background about yourself?
Sure. So my undergraduate was a film degree, and I actually wanted to be a movie director. After college, I spent a couple of years in that industry at sort of low-level jobs. But I was getting into computers at the time using, let's see, at the time it was Windows PCs. The Mac was sort of growing as a platform. And, I started programming and doing a lot of graphics on the computer. And I could sort of see the potential. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. The potential for content to become digital. And because I was basically in the content industry, I was very interested in that idea. And friend of mine was attending a program at NYU. It's a master's program called ITP, or Interactive Telecommunications. It's sort of a combination of engineering and art and design, similar to the MIT Media Lab. And she said, hey, you should check it out. Maybe this is the way to pursue this idea of digital content. And this, this was like the early 90s, as I said. It was something that relatively few people were thinking about. But I could see this program, was the place to study this. The director, a woman named Red Burns, was like already like far ahead of the game. She's no longer with us, but she was a real visionary. So I wound up there doing a master's program. My senior thesis was the first sign language dictionary to use digital video, and I wound up selling that product, that company, to a publisher. That was kind of my first exit. The first product I built and designed was this sign language dictionary. And from there, I wound up working at Microsoft, leading a team of engineers and designers to develop a history of the 20th century based on the Encarta brand. I don't know if anyone remembers Encarta. It was the first DVD encyclopedia. This was 1995. DVDs and CDs at the time were were sort of tanking as a product category. So that project was canceled, but I wound up working on a lot of interesting things at Microsoft, leading product teams at MSN and on the Windows team, and then wound up working at Sony, leading product teams to launch Sony's first digital music services. And from there, I wound up at Adobe, where I was part of the team that was helping Adobe transition from selling CDs and DVDs, a physical goods business, to a cloud-based business model with cloud-based services. And so we launched a bunch of services around Adobe Creative Cloud. And it was around that time that I really, my entrepreneurial juices started flowing again. And I was kind of bored with software, to be honest. This was pre-iPhone, or just when the iPhone had just come out. And it felt like we had sort of reached the peak of desktop applications and Internet 2.0. And a friend of mine wanted to start a company focused on designing some physical products. The idea was to get consumers to shift away from bottled water to more sustainable solutions. And we had this idea of basically creating the Apple of personal hydration, as we called it. And the vision was a line of reusable bottles that were very functional and fashionable, portable filtration products, and water enhancements, things that would allow you to enhance your water with different flavorings or functional benefits like energy or nutritional functions. And so I quit Adobe to start this company in the middle of the financial crisis. People said I was crazy, and I probably was. But we really caught fire. We were like today you can buy designer water bottles everywhere. We were literally the first company to pioneer this concept. And we were on fire for a couple, 3 years. Products were featured in a bunch of movies and TV shows. I don't know if you remember the first Iron Man. Second Iron Man, Tony Stark is drinking this vital, life-giving fluid from a very unusual container. That was one of our water bottles. And
wow,
cool.
Yeah, we didn't pay a dime for that placement. And so I was learning about physical products and things like supply chains and inventory and helping grow this company. But I wasn't really very good or very inspired by the world of physical products. I decided to go back into technology. So I left day-to-day responsibilities at Core. That was the name of the company. Did my own startup, which was Group Dragon. Group Dragon was an online platform or mobile platform to help people form what are called accountability groups. You probably would recognize these in the form of like a Weight Watchers group or Alcoholics Anonymous. They're very good at helping people achieve their goals. And so we built a platform that would allow you to join a group or form a group, get a coach. Some great product lessons there. Company failed, unlike Core. And then wound up working for another friend's company called Cyanogen up in Silicon Valley for a couple of years. Some great product lessons there. And my next company, the company I have now, long story short, right, is called Karen. And Karen stemmed from problem in my personal life with my mom having dementia and some other issues that basically forced my family to become responsible for her care, and saw a lot of problems for people in that situation that I thought we could solve with a technology platform. So that's what we're building today. And so, throughout all of this experience, a lot of failures, some successes, a lot of scars, a lot of lessons. And like I said, cracking the code is not easy, right?
Amazing journey. And the topic is personally of interest to me because my mom's undergoing some of that herself, and her care is something my brothers and I are definitely very, very in tune to. And so I'm interested in learning more about your company and how it's helping folks that are challenged with that today. Can you give us a little bit more about? We've learned that gave birth to this. Is Karen your mom's name? Is that her name? Is that what?
It's not. It's my co-founder's aunt. But
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how it works. What is it that you're solving?
Yeah. So we like to think of this as a guide that guides families through what we call the elder care journey. And so every family is at a different point on this journey. The journey starts, with your mom, your dad, your aunt or uncle, grandparent, being healthy and independent. At some point, they become less independent. Maybe there's a diagnosis or an illness or just fragility. They move into a state of dependence, maybe with home care or in assisted living. Typically then there's another phase, which is greater dependence, greater fragility, and then end of life. So the idea is the platform guides you through each of these stages using a combination of software and human experts. There are 3 pillars to the platform. The first is what we call the action plan. You fill out a short survey, and it captures a wide range of information about your family's situation and the person you're caring for. And we have an algorithm that's designed to mimic the recommendations of elder care experts. And the algorithm generates what we call an action plan. And it's basically a set of tasks prioritized by the algorithm that you can then perform with your family members to get a handle on the situation or prepare for a situation that may be coming if you're earlier in that stage. So that's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is collaboration. You can invite family members in. We have some lightweight collaboration and project management tools. For example, you can take one of those tasks in your action plan and you can assign it to another family member. They can set a due date. They can add notes. You can add notes back. You can have conversations about these tasks. And then the third pillar is the human experts. And so we're embedding basically an expert marketplace right within each of these tasks. So for example, Carlos, maybe you're worried about your mom's finances, that she may be unable to manage those at some point. So we might recommend you get a power of attorney to get ahead of that problem. And you'll get a task in your action plan and something you may want to tackle yourself. We'll provide you with some self-service options. But if you want to get help from an attorney, you click a button and we'll recommend an attorney that you can work with and actually collaborate with right from within the application to complete that particular task. So those are the 3 pillars of the product.
Wow, that's amazing that you've created that. And I'm curious, related to the topic you've chosen today, what are some of the lessons you're applying in that design and that evolution of that product?
Yeah. So,
like, what's working for you? I mean, people use lean methodologies, Canvas. I mean, what do you, Osterweiler, you know, what's working? I'm curious to hear what's working for you.
What's working for us? Yeah, great. It's a great question. I'll just point out that the third pillar is launching next month. So we haven't launched that yet. So let's answer your other question. I would characterize what we've done as definitely lean. I'm a big adherent of lean startup. Also, I would say we're using all the design thinking methodologies. You know, it's another buzzword, right? With regard to lean, you know, what we did was we tried to be very disciplined in terms of that build, measure, learn cycle that lean is really all about. So the build part for us was we built an MVP, and it was completely under the radar, but we shared it in a Facebook campaign. And so we had some hypotheses. You know, that's another big part of the lean methodology. We had some hypotheses about the market we were going after and how they would use the product and how they would like the product and respond to the product. So we tested those hypotheses by recruiting actual families who had these elder care issues in a Facebook campaign. And of course, the product MVP we built was instrumented. You know, we could see exactly what our conversion rate was, where the friction points were in the funnel. We had a set of KPIs that we could measure for all of these users who were coming in through the campaign to see if our hypotheses were correct. So we actually went through 3 cycles of that build, measure, learn cycle. We did 3 Facebook campaigns. Each time we made corrections to the product, improvements to the product, and we could see these KPIs improving to the point where we felt we were ready to do a public beta. So that's sort of the lean aspect in a nutshell to what we did. I mean, if you like, I can talk about some of the other methodologies we employed around design thinking.
Yeah, I'd love to learn some more. I mean, our audience is always looking for unique ways to apply design. I think it's interesting, 10 years ago, people put out software, the design was like an afterthought, which was a huge mistake, right? That was before everybody had apps and Amazon and everything else that makes life so much simpler today. And those consumer apps, you know, kind of raised the bar on what the customer experience should look like. So now it's really unacceptable for software to look like green bars back in the day. So always curious to learn new tricks, new lessons, new ways, or even proven ways that people overlook.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, the bar is very high, but I'm a firm believer in this saying that you'll hear a lot, which is if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, then you spend too much time on it. And it's something personally that's really hard for me to follow because I'm a perfectionist and I love design. But
hang on, repeat that again. If you what? Say it again.
If you're not embarrassed by your MVP, if you're not embarrassed by it, you spend too much time or money on it.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you to repeat that because it's a very, very, very tweetable quote in real time. So
usually it's the. I mean, I'm like, did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Usually, if you're like, okay, so if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, it means you spend too much time on it.
Yeah, because the MVP is supposed to be.
You should be embarrassed. Okay, got it.
It's supposed to be ugly, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, when I look back on the initial designs that we launched with in that first campaign, they're pretty hideous. But you know, the lesson there was they did the job. They helped us prove and disprove a set of hypotheses that we had at the time, and allowed us to move to the next phase. You know, the other thing that they did, that the MVP did, was it gave us confidence that we were on the right path. Like, you know, a big part of lean, as you know, is don't get too attached to your idea. the business model, the design, whatever it is, even the problem you're solving. We were pretty attached to these 3 pillars that I talked about earlier. But we were ready to pivot. But what we saw by building that MVP and test it was, yeah, we were on the right path. So you asked me to talk about some of the methodologies we used. So usability studies were a big part of this. After each of these iterations, we not only looked at the metrics, but we also did usability studies, and we did those online for the most part with there's some great tools, Usability Hub and usertesting.com. Really found those effective. We also did interviews. We recruited some of the users for interviews and got a lot of good, more qualitative data. And even before we launched the MVP, when we were in the design phase, we did what's called customer discovery, which is basically interviews. Those were all super helpful.
You're speaking a language that our head of product design, Misael Leon, would be very proud of, because that's one of the things here at Nearsoft is we do feasibility studies, research, which a lot of companies seem to forget how important that is. Like, how do you design something without understanding how your users are going to interact, whether they have an interest in it, what are you disrupting? So definitely speaking our language here. We appreciate that. What do you noticed in terms of pushback from, are you finding, working with engineers, that they often have trouble with that design thinking? Is that shifting now? What are you seeing?
With engineers, that's interesting. Well, so my main engineering partner is my co-founder, and he's a brilliant guy who's completely bought in. I would say, the tension may be as follows: engineers want to build, and a good product manager or designer wants that software development process to unfold a little bit more slowly, so you have time to do all the research and testing that may not even require software. You can do fantastic tests with mock-ups, even paper prototypes, right? So yeah, I think to answer your question, maybe the tension is engineers want to build, and designers hopefully want to go more slowly, and that's the tension that should exist, I think.
Interesting. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, balance that, right?
In your experience.
Yeah. So I would say we probably overbuilt, because my engineering team, my CTO, won more arguments than I did, and we'll see how that plays out. The reason he won the arguments largely was because he could say, well, we have these engineers already building. If we hit pause now, we might not be able to get them back, right? Or when they do come back, they won't be as productive. So we should just keep going. And in a lot of cases, I would agree with that, because I felt confident in the roadmap. Looking back on the development cycle, I'd say, well, I was probably overconfident, because we built some things that we probably should have built later, should have been pushed down on the roadmap. And as a result, there are some features that should have been built earlier. Who knows how it plays out in the end? But I can look back and see that debate, and maybe it was ultimately a bad idea to give up on those arguments.
That's an interesting observation and experience. There's a few of us who've been talking about the future works to sort of take a life of their own, right? You have to, the minute you have an organization, you have to sustain it and keep feeding it and keep maintaining it. So you kind of lose purpose, because you're not purpose driven, you're organizational driven, right? So some of us believe that in the future, design will be more purpose driven, which is why you're going to have a lot more freelance and sort of this fluid in and out of approach of things. What are your thoughts around that? Do you think that would solve that dilemma long term?
I think that would be awesome, right? If we could get engineers into this mindset that we're gonna have to pause at certain points, and whatever it is that you're building needs to be modular enough to be able to come back to, you know, when we have enough data. So that's just one way to I think about it. But then you know, obviously, if you have marketing folks and you have finance folks, I mean, they're all putting pressure on you as well to build. So how do you build an organization that is completely, let's call it, you know, design centered? I'd love to try that. We should talk more about that. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, we're still having conversation around the fact that most organizations are still embedded in the assembly line methodology back in the, you know, 4 days, and
Right.
that ultimately being purpose driven, there is no organization. But that's a whole other conversation for another day. Any questions that we have from the audience? Because this is a great topic. Looks like you really understand the challenges around design, and you've given some great tips here. Any questions from the audience, Carlos, that we want to give Paul access to Paul?
Well, only one. Actually, it's from one of our guys here. Hold on one second. And excuse me. Okay. Now this is coming here through Slack, by the way. Actually, it's coming from Jorge Simons, our social media expert. And Jorge is just asking, why do you think the markets are ready for what you're offering?
Why do we think the markets are ready for what we're offering? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A few reasons. And first, I'll preface this by saying I don't think the mass market is ready. But what we've seen over the past 5 years is that basically people in their 50s and 60s and late 40s are adopting technology at a greater rate. Right? They're using Facebook every day, and at the office, you know, they're using things like Salesforce and SAP. When they plan travel, they're using Travelocity or Kayak. So, and these are the people who are caring for elderly parents right now, and they're often referred to as the sandwich generation because they have kids of their own. So they're sandwiched between caring for their kids and parents. And you know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, a technology platform like Karen would have had a smaller addressable market because, again, people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s were just less adopting technology at a slower rate. So that's one reason we think the market is ready, or at least the early adopters. Another reason is the growth in the elderly population. It's projected to double from where it is today in just I think 15 years. And you know, another reason is more and more families are opting to what's called age in place. So assisted living is becoming a less desirable outcome, and elderly folks, seniors want to stay at home, which places a lot more burden on families. They basically have to manage finances and home care and health care. So tools like Karen are going to become increasingly important as that trend unfolds.
I think tools like that are fantastic. I actually want to thank you for building that. Do you think that this could also be used for other care? I mean, like there's other handicaps, for example.
Yeah, we do.
Anything. There could be adults, for example, who have autism that need some kind of support. How is that? Is this something that could be used there too?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of companies in the space which are focused on helping families that have children with disabilities, which I think is what you're referring to. And yeah, they are employing some planning tools that are somewhat similar to Karen. And yeah, it's a market that we'd like to get into someday, but solving the needs of the elder care customer, it's plenty for us right now.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. All right. So we're coming up on time. It always happens when we're starting to get really in the thick of it. But hey, you guys have to Paul, Dulce, or Carlos?
Yeah, sure. We will continue on and on with the topic, and I think it's very interesting what you're doing, Paul. I did some research on the platform that you're working on, and it's incredible. I mean, I can identify it because of experience with my family, so it will be great that we could have that access here in Mexico. It will be great. So thank you, Paul, for joining us today. I don't know if you have any last words of wisdom for our audience that you would like to share.
Yes, please.
Well, here's one. There are a lot of methodologies out there and buzzwords in the product design world, and they're all great. We're living in a very exciting time with all this great thinking, but I would urge founders not to get distracted. It really comes down to just a few simple rules, like know your customer, okay? Build something that at least a handful of them are going to love. You don't have to serve all of them. And use the lean methodology, which is build an MVP, measure your success, and then iterate, build, measure, learn. Just go slowly, and have fun.
Great, awesome, thank you. So, Carlos, can you please tell us what's coming up for next session on DojoLIVE?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Paul, for being with us.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Thank you to Paul for being with us today, for sure.
Having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, before we sign off and let you go, Paul, just a quick announcement about this is about next week. Next week on DojoLIVE, we are going to be speaking with, hold on one second, let me just check it here, with Jonathan Chow from B-Token. B-Token is a platform that seeks to reinvent the home sharing economy by building a middleman-free peer-to-peer network of hosts and guests on the decentralized web. And the topic is going to be the rise of enterprise and blockchain in the travel industry. So that's next week's topic, and that's going to happen on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, just so that you know, folks, make a note of it. Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific. And I'll see you next week. And with that being said, Dulce, back to you for wrap-up, please.
Sure. So thank you, Paul, for joining us today. It was a great time. We could schedule another session because we still had a lot of questions that we wanted to ask you. So thank you. It was great to see you. Thank you, guys, Carlos and Tulio, for joining us today. And thank you, our audience, for always being here with us. We're going to have a lot of more fun this year. So thank you. Have a great day, and see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.